Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
I'm excited too. I feel like as a single, you're married, right? You're a
That's
married woman with a lovely, beautiful family. As a
wonderful.
single thug like myself who's out in the streets,
Full screen, so I guess hot, but
the hot streets of Phoenix, we always I feel like wonder what it's like to work with a matchmaker. Like we hear about matchmakers, we see them, but I don't know. I feel like physically putting money towards a matchmaker, we never really think to do it. It's nothing a lot of us really invest in. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's because we don't think it'll work. I don't know if it's because we don't deem it something we want to spend money on. I'm not quite sure, but
yeah.
I don't know any matchmakers, but I know you and you're a matchmaker. And so I kind of just want to get your intel on like how you got into it. Um, yeah, just like everything, how you got into it, like just everything. And then I have some questions about me. I'm like, could I be matched? But yes, how did you get into it?
Completely. Okay, for sure. So, before matchmaking, I was in the event planning industry, both on like the business side, business meetings, as well as personal ones, such as weddings. And I always remember, ever since being a little girl, I loved going to weddings. It was my favorite thing. Just the idea of two people, coming together in a lifelong union. I mean, what is more beautiful than that? I just love it. And so when the pandemic hit, event planning was hit pretty hard, like many other industries. And so I knew I needed to pivot. And that's kind of how I came across matchmaking. I saw the job listing and I thought, I don't know if I'm qualified for this, but it sounds like fun. And so I went for it. And as they say, the rest is history.
Wow, that is so awesome. And that is true. It is really sweet to like bring people together,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's crazy. I'm just trying to think of like playing matchmaker with. Do you ever play matchmaker with your friends or family? Have you ever done that before? Or,
It's funny you mention it. My very first match was before I was professionally a matchmaker. When I was in college, I my roommate met a guy that I thought would be. I basically introduced her to someone. They got married, had a kid. So that was my very first match, and that was years and years ago.
wow, okay. So
But
you've always
that's the only time I've ever played matchmaker, like in my personal life.
yeah. Well, I will say as a single gal, I'm starting to believe the best way to meet people or a partner is through someone that you know. Like
That's so true. Yeah.
like I've tried the apps. They're, whatever. And also I work remote fully, so I'm not in an office where I can meet a cute
Yeah.
bae, getting coffee. Like I'm just at home all the time,
Right.
hence the look. So so it's like the
Right.
thought of like I always tell my girlfriends, I'm like, "Hey, if your husband has any friends, if your brother like I always tell them, and I think a lot of us forget. Like my friend, she was like, "Oh, I only see them as brothers." And I'm like, "But I don't see them as brothers." I'm like,
Right.
send them to me. I
Oh,
don't I don't know them, right? Like help me.
I'm true. I
Um
love that.
so yeah, no, I am like, please help me. If you know a man, send him to me.
Exactly.
I'm curious or if there's any like misconceptions that you know about that people might have about working with a matchmaker or like what that's like what do you, because I mean let me just say I've looked into matchmaking before, especially here in Phoenix. I just was like, what's out there? There's a lot of wealthy people in Scottsdale. I'm like, there has to be a matchmaker out there matching people up.
For
And it
sure.
just looked so, I don't want to say shady, but it just didn't look like, first of all, it targeted to a certain age. And I was like, ooh, that's a little, good for them. But I'm like, what about the younger people? And I didn't really see
Yeah.
anything for people of color. That was like,
Yeah. That's a good point too.
yeah, I was like, oh, like, do you match people of color? Like, you have experience in that? Like, I feel like those
Yeah.
things are kind of necessary. But yeah, I don't know if there's any misconceptions or people have said things to you about being a
Sure.
matchmaker.
Yeah. Those are all really good points. And I feel like uh, it's hard to say because I feel like people do come into matchmaking, of course, with an idea of what they're looking for already, which I think is great because I feel like the better you can articulate what you're looking for, the better your matchmaker can match you. But I also agree with with your points that you just mentioned. I think that finding the right matchmaker is important as well because I think that when you kind of align in certain regards, it makes it kind of easier, right?
Mhm.
Like for example, like you said, if you're looking for a person of color, having a matchmaker that's already a person of color, they can kind of understand some of those nuances, right?
Mhm.
And better match you in that regard. Or maybe like faith is something that's important to you. So having a matchmaker who can kind of understand some of those different nuances kind of helps as well. And so it really just kind of depends on what's important to you, talking to different matchmakers to kind of get, an idea of what their expertise is in, is probably the best way to put it.
Okay, that is good to know. Do you have an expertise at all, or do you just you do it all?
Uh, I kind of do it all, but I think I'm positioned well as well because again, I'm a person of color. So when I have a client who is also a person of color and they're looking for that, I'm like, I got you, and so there are different ways in which I'm experienced, but I've also been doing this for several years now. So you kind of you gain knowledge as you go, essentially.
You do get, yeah, that makes sense. I'm curious. So, like, what does it look like? Like a day in the life, or like a day in the, you get a new client, like,
Yeah.
do you call them? Do you talk, like, how do you, what's the intake process? And also, what things do you look for in a client to work with? Can you turn down clients, or do you just make it work? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm gonna start with that last one because since I work for a company, I can't really turn down
Right.
clients. I will say there are times though when you kind of start working with a client and you both just kind of feel like it's not quite the right fit, and that happens sometimes, and that's
Hmm.
okay. Again, sometimes it depends. You want to work with somebody that you enjoy working with, and
Right.
sometimes you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and that's perfectly fine. And
True.
so, but yeah, to answer that, no, I can't reject clients, and sometimes it doesn't always work out, and that's fine. And so, to answer the first part, what was the first part of your question actually? Oh, the intake
Yep. The
process.
intake. Yep.
Yes. And so, when you get assigned a new client, basically you meet with them, and we have what's called a welcome meeting,
Mm.
and that's just the time for us to get to know each other, get an idea of what are your values, what is your lifestyle, what's of course important to you in a partner, and we usually spend at least an hour kind of going over some of those things so that you can understand their background. Where do they come from, what drives them, stuff like that, and that's kind of the start of the process. After that, once you get an idea of what the person is looking for, of course, you hit the database and basically see, kind of apply the filters of what they're looking for, age, ethnicity, religious background, political stance, all the sorts of. Sorry if you can hear that. I'm going to mute that. Well, actually, I don't know if I can. Wow, lots of emails. Okay, we're just going to close that tab. But yeah, basically you just hit the database, start meeting with different people, see who might be a good fit depending on what that person is also looking for, so you can make sure it's a compatible match on both sides. And once you feel like you have a good fit, you set them up on a date and kind of hope for the best.
Oh my God. Okay. Do you pick the date? Like, do you set
I
up the date?
do. I set up everything start to finish. And so usually I'll just set up a reservation under my name, have them meet at the table. And yeah, yeah.
Oh my God. So they literally get to the restaurant and they're like, reservation for Jasmine, even though none of us are Jasmine. Got it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Wow. Okay. And then
Mental structure.
do they report back? And like,
Yeah.
what is that like? Like
That's
yeah.
my favorite part, right? Because like as the client, you're looking forward to the date itself and seeing how that goes. But I'm not on the date. Like I want to hear how it goes, and so I want to get your feedback on, did you click? What was the conversation like? And was there attraction? All of those sorts of things. And so feedback is my favorite part. So I can hear about it. They can kind of dish a little bit and see if there's anything about their criteria that needs changing or
Mm.
adding to. So as we kind of move forward throughout the process, we kind of refine, what it is they're looking for and things like that.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Okay.
It's fun. I love it.
Interesting. Okay. Another question for you. In this age, I assume you work with all types of age client. Does your clientele kind of lean towards more one or so age group, or?
Yeah. So I would say majority of my clients are women, and I would
Okay.
say a majority of them are, I would say 40s, 50s, 60s. I would say that's the primary demographic of clientele that I work with. And that's honestly, I think that's because of the company that I work for. I
Mhm.
think that's just kind of, what's the most popular. But of course, we see other demographics, younger, older, and stuff like that. Men also, of course. But yeah, I think that's just the primary demographic of the company that I'm at.
Okay, that's an interesting point. I feel like that age demographic, 40s, 50s, 60s, you might be dealing with people who've been divorced or people who like
Right.
are looking to start again or
Yes.
not or just even first time, you know?
Yeah.
It makes
Agreed.
me think about I'm in my late 20s and I'm like us people sometimes I mean, the dating world is crazy and also there's a lot of people with different intentions and that aren't serious. I also take it on the other side. When you're a little older, you're a little bit more sure of yourself, what you want, and also you are paying, right? So
Yeah. Makes a
it's
difference.
it's an investment, right? Makes a difference versus us youngins who are just like whatever, like oh, let's meet these losers
Right.
on a dating app. It's like when you put more money
Yeah.
into it and more investment. But I'm curious, do you have any type of assessment or do you deal with anyone who maybe even though they're paying and even though their intentions are clear, they still like aren't acting like they're ready to be in a relationship?
Yeah. Absolutely. And it shocks me too, because like you said, when you put that kind of monetary investment into something, you would think that you would be a little bit more, you know, that you would just be
Serious, right?
exactly. And so that happens, not often, but I definitely do see it happening every now and then.
How do you deal with it? Because I know you can't get rid of clients per se, but like,
Right.
do you have that honest conversation with them, or do you just?
If it gets to a certain point, yeah. And it actually happened last week where I was trying to schedule a date and the client was just kind of unresponsive. And after a while, the guy that I was trying to set her up with was like, "Hey, this is taking a while. Like maybe this isn't going to be a good fit after all. It doesn't seem like she's super available." And so I basically went back and told her the exact same thing he told me, and just to kind of deliver the message like, hey, when you're unresponsive, it sends the message that you're not really available or ready to be dating. And so sometimes you do have to have those hard conversations so that they're kind of aware of the signals they're giving off.
Yeah, that's. I feel like that's a tough conversation to have.
It is, but honestly, matchmaking is a process that requires a certain level of vulnerability. I even had a drug conversation with a client earlier this week because somebody that she matched with basically accused her of using drugs. And that was a hard conversation to have because, I mean, that was a big assumption.
Hmm.
So, anyway, all sorts of things come out, all sorts of things.
Oh my gosh, yeah, yeah.
What
I
do you
and
know?
for some people, like I don't know. I guess when putting money towards something doesn't always mean you're gonna put your best foot forward too. I
Yeah,
guess.
absolutely. That's so true. And the clients that I work with, a lot of them have a lot of money. And so to some of them, like this is like it's nothing, right? And so I think that's kind of why they treat it in that way sometimes. Like I said, it's rare that that happens, but it happens.
Yeah, no, totally. And dealing with different types of people and different types of personalities. And I feel like something that I'm just like thinking, I'm like putting myself in your shoes. I'm like, what else could like, I feel like people might, because on paper, on our dating resume, we want to look good, right? But like maybe they give you one version of themselves and then they give their
Mhm.
date a different version of themselves or vice versa, you know?
Yeah, for sure. That also happens. And I think, too, when you're meeting with people to see if they could be a good fit for your client, exactly what you said happens. They're trying to put the best image of themselves forth so that they can get matched
Hmm.
and, hope it goes well. And it's not, sometimes they show up on the date not as the person I met with. And so
Right.
that's a challenge, too. But, we take it in strides, I suppose.
Yeah, take it in strides. How do you work with and match so many different types of personalities? Like if I came to
Mhm.
you and I said, "Hey Jasmine, I want a 7 foot Buddhist man with blue eyes who's vegan and works out 4 days a week, only on a full moon." Like what how do you how, how do
Yeah.
you work with that?
So I think one of the advantages of having been a matchmaker for such a, I won't say a super long period of time, but I've had some years under my belt. One of the advantages of that is when people do come to me with I won't necessarily say unrealistic expectations, but when they come with very specific, standards of what they're looking for, I can kind of go to them and say, hey, I'm not trying to challenge you in any way, but from what I've seen of, the men in your area or the particular demographic that you're seeking, these are the patterns that I'm noticing. I
Mm.
can definitely try to look for what it is you're seeking, but just giving you the reality of the situation as I know it thus far. And so sometimes that kind of reality check helps people rein it in
Right.
a little bit. And so I find that helps. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. I'm like, when it's kind of crazy that some people still have such strict types,
Oh yeah. Oh
you
yeah.
know?
Oh yeah. I know. I know.
You do know. I feel like I don't know. I'm more mature, right? When we were young, I mean, my type was Chris Brown, light skin, light eyes, tattoo. Like, okay, we
Right.
gotta be. They people don't even aren't even born looking like that. Like, we gotta like be like right. Like, I'm like black people don't have blue eyes. We gotta let that go. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
so and then the older you get, I think for me, it comes down to realizing I'm like, if I want love with someone, obviously, yes, you have things you're attracted to or maybe not attracted to. But at the end of the day, it's like, I'm looking for a partner, a life partner. I'm looking for a husband, etc. So if you don't have a six pack, I don't either. It's okay. Like it's not about the physical.
Absolutely. And you're hitting the nail on the head right now, Destiny. That's like you're preaching to the choir, really, because that's what I'm always trying to convey. Matchmaking is a process that requires open mindedness and it requires flexibility because, like you said, you can't expect the love of your life to necessarily be packaged in the way that you might have initially envisioned. And so that's a really crucial part of the process that I wish more people kind of came into it with the understanding of.
I agree. And I think it holds us back. And the older we get, I'm just like, really?
Yes.
You still have like
Yes.
those boundaries? Like she has to have this color hair. it's like, really?
Right. Right. It's shocking. It really is. And I think I was thinking about this earlier too, because as we age, like you said, we kind of harden in our lifestyles and our habits. And I think it reduces our ability to compromise, but that's necessary in every single relationship. There's no perfect partner. So no matter who you meet, their problems are inevitable. You're going to have to compromise in some regard. So yeah, totally true. Totally true.
And I agree. And it's like, again, it's like at the end of the day, what is the goal here? Do you want
Yeah.
love? If that's the goal, then some of those superficial, like it's more about like, how do they make you
Yes.
feel? The things you can do together, like the life you're going to build. Like think about what
Yes.
does that feel like? I mean, I'm not
Exactly.
saying he has to be ugly and you have to be like, oh, I don't want to look at him. But like,
Right. Is important.
it's
Agreed.
important. But if it's not, Idris Elba, like it's
Right.
okay.
Exactly. Exactly. No, that's so true. Like even in my own personal experience, similar to you, growing up, I was like, he has to be dark. He has all these different things. I married a light skin. Okay. And here we are 5 years in and it's great. So yeah, you just got to be open-minded sometimes.
You definitely have to be open-minded. That's so interesting. So, well, I'm gonna just throw it on your radar. If you have a tall,
Hold up. Let me get my notepad.
right, get the notepad. I'm like, who's my type? I don't really have a type, but lately, I've dated all races.
Okay. Okay.
But I prefer black men right now.
Yeah.
Um, I've been. What's his name? He was on Black Panther,
Ooh.
and
Okay.
it doesn't help if I don't know his name.
I'm like this too, but I'm tracking with you so far.
I'm looking it up. What's that man's name? It's on the tip of my tongue, but like. I'm leaning toward Winston Duke.
Winston Duke. I'm gonna have to look
Mbaku. He was like,
Oh, I got you now. Okay. Yes, girl. I'm with you, right? Yes.
mhm,
Absolutely. What a dreamboat. I mean,
I just need that, like, he's like a bear. Like, I just need that, like, you're big, but
okay.
like still thick, but not like,
I'm feeling
like,
you. Yeah,
and
definitely.
yeah.
I got
Mhm.
you 100%.
Yeah,
I'll keep my eyes open for you,
look through your
girl.
database from Baku, please.
I love it.
That man is so fine. Winston Duke is so fine. And then I think I saw him in Us, the horror movie.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And
I think that's on Netflix right now.
it
Yeah.
is, and he plays like the husband and the dad, and I was like seeing him
Right.
as a dad. I was like, oh.
Even better. Come through, Winston.
Please, Winston, if you're listening, I actually, when I lived in LA, I went to some social event and I saw him. And I remember
No
I
way.
just, yeah, it was like a mixer and I just froze. And I was standing so close to him. And I was like, I should say something. I should introduce my, and I didn't. I just like, that could have been the day. That could have been the connection.
You know what?
Winston, I'm here
What's meant to be will be. Maybe you'll run into him again.
in Phoenix. Come on down.
You never know.
You never know. Oh, yeah. So anyway, if you have a Winston, I have a list of celebrities, but Winston Duke, he's on the list. So if you have a lookalike in your database,
I'll let you know.
tell me where to send the money.
You'll be the first to know.
Do you have any heartwarming stories you can share? Of course you can like change it. You know, you don't have to go into grand detail, but like, do you have any stories of like success stories or?
Absolutely. So I can definitely think of one. And this was a client, she bought a 12 match package. So we went through the entire 12 matches, and at the end of it, the last one, it was just a dud. He just wasn't really the best match for her, and there wasn't any connection. So we were both naturally disappointed because that was the last match, and I wanted to send her out with a bang. And so as it happened, I actually had met with someone else. He was also on my calendar, and I was like, you know what? Let me go at least meet with him, you know, see what happens. And I loved him. I was like, oh my gosh, yes. And so I ended up giving her a bonus match. They went out, had an amazing time. It was the very first date that she actually she kissed him on the first date, and so they had a wonderful time. As far as I know, they are still seeing each other. This probably happened toward the beginning of the year. And so it was just a wonderful way to end the package. Cause she's definitely like a career woman powerhouse. Some might even perceive her as a little bit cold. You know, she definitely has a certain kind of personality is the best way that I can put it. So not the easiest person to match in the sense of, you know, a lot of men are kind of seeking a little bit of femininity or just even softness, which is not something that she is one of her most prominent qualities, I'll say. So anyway, the fact that that date went off so well, that was a really big dopamine boost for both of us, I think.
I love that. Do you have anyone that ever like, even though when they're done using your services, come back and report on how they're doing?
Oh, yeah. And that's the best too, right? Because, you know, I'm in the business of setting up first dates. So I don't always hear like the updates of, you know, the long-term relationship and how things have progressed. And so I always love when they come back and they're like, this is how we're doing, or sending pictures. Like that just makes my day, because it's knowing that you played a part in that. That makes it super rewarding for sure.
No, that's awesome. That is awesome. Do you ever think you would do your own like matchmaking? Like go off on your own? Yeah.
If I had known about matchmaking before I met my husband, I definitely would have been like, set me up. Because I think it's just fun, right? Like,
yeah.
I think the process is it's just enjoyable. But I mean, I met him how I met him, so that's good too.
True. Do you have any crazy stories you can share?
You know I do. You know I do. I was trying to think, I'll just tell the most recent one. So I set up this client, a female client with this guy, and the guy, he's kind of like a creative, free-spirited type, you know. So they meet each other. They're sitting down at the table. He's telling her about his different, you know, creative pursuits and adventures. And I guess there's this one time that he was modeling for this this like artistic photo shoot, and he shows her this picture of him. He's completely naked. He is covered in gold paint, and when he shows her this picture, he's like, "Oh, don't worry about the penis. It's a prosthetic." So you can't make this stuff up. So that's probably my most recent one, where you're just like, "Huh?"
What?
So that, yeah, and I've got plenty more, but that's the most recent one. Yeah.
So these men, okay, they're a little different.
Just on the first date, I mean, sure, maybe later on, you know, but the first date, I don't know. That's just me.
I feel like this is a sticky topic because, and this is something, I feel like I'm that person who's very good at, and this is not a good thing, but I can be very quick to be like, you know, thinking, I won't say it out loud, but thinking like, oh, like you did that on a first date. Like that's why you're still single. You know what I mean? But it's like, I'm also single and I don't think there's anything wrong with me.
True,
You know
true.
what I mean? So like, how do you deal with clients that do crazy stuff on the date and you're like, dude, that's why we're here? But also it's like, it's not coming from a place of judgment, because there are people who are single. Just because you're single doesn't mean there's something wrong with you.
Sure.
But it's like, but then in the same turn, it's like, is there something wrong with me? You know what I mean?
And that's one of the reasons I love the feedback process so much, because it's not only for me to get feedback from my client, but it's also for me to get feedback about them from the person I match them with. And so if I start to see patterns, that's when I'm like, okay, I have some feedback that I want to share with you. Are you open to hearing it? This might kind of help you. And usually they're open to hearing it, and we can kind of discuss those together. But if it's like you said, like if it's a one-time thing, or something outlandish like that. Luckily, he wasn't my client, so I didn't really feel the need to address it with him.
Okay.
But if it was like about my client and I noticed those patterns, we can kind of, discuss those together and formulate ways to, help them show up as their best self moving forward.
Okay, good. You're really mature. I don't know if I was a matchmaker, I'd be like, sir, this is why we're in the boat. We're like, I would really be honest with them and they'd probably fire me. So
I
good,
love that.
good for you.
Oh my gosh. No, that works too. Shoot, there's no, he should have been called out.
Honestly, like you don't do you not see what you're doing? You know what I mean? It's like, I wish we could almost watch ourselves on dates or watch ourselves when we talk to people.
Honestly, that would be a good social experiment. That sounds fun.
Because I think a lot of times we think of how maybe we were perceived or what our intentions were, but we're not seeing that awkward interaction where we just showed someone our genitals talking about it's a prosthetic. Like,
I can't explain it.
It's so odd. That is odd. That is odd. I did want to, you mentioned a while back, you mentioned something about one of your clients who seemed a little bit hardened and not super feminine, etc. And I'm curious how you go about matching someone like that. I have come to terms with the fact that, I mean, I can get feminine physically. Like I love makeup and hair and I love looking pretty and girly. But these days, post-pandemic, that has gone. I mean, pre-pandemic, I was lashes, full face, weave, nails, toes, like I was on. And then the pandemic hit and I worked remote, and now I'm just like kind of a recluse and I don't really wear makeup and I wear like comfy clothes and I'm okay with it. I still think I'm beautiful, but
100%.
But dating, it can be challenging, when I'm not the stiletto queen I was 3 years ago, and some men are looking for that feminine, etc. And even when on dates, being my true self, I tend to have more like alpha female qualities, and like I'm very independent and things like that. So I'm curious how you work with women like that, considering I feel like we're in a wave of, not all men, but a lot of men are kind of, it's socially acceptable right now to look for a feminine woman and things like that.
Sure. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I do have this document that I actually share with clients before their first date, clients and the matches alike, because I think it kind of helps give context and perspective on what, not necessarily what people find attractive, because I don't want you to try to fit into a certain mold to make yourself something that you're not, but to kind of give you some tips and pointers that might help you be more successful on dates and things like that. One of them is about, first of all, being confident. No matter how you present and show up, you've got to be comfortable in your own skin, because people can feel that, and so that's definitely a big one. Another one that comes up pretty often is conversation, right? That's the biggest part of the date itself. How does the conversation go? And sometimes one person will talk entirely about themselves and not really ask questions. And so that reciprocity is definitely something that's also required, I think, in first dates, that sometimes people forget. And so I think that's also really important. But to kind of address like the whole femininity thing, I think I have a lot of thoughts about this. My most predominant thought, I think, is about, like you said, you want to show up as authentically as you possibly can. And so, and basically the person that you're meeting with, if they can't accept that, then that's not the person for you. But there are things that you can do in the same breath that will help you feel more feminine, such as, like you said, what you wear, or just how you present yourself and things like that. And so I think there are different ways that you can kind of embody like that softness and femininity without straying from who you really are, if that makes sense, as cliche as it sounds.
No, it does make sense. It does make sense. And I think again, I had coffee with my friend Tiffany last week, and she's married, and her and her husband just moved out here, but she made a good point. She was just saying like her true self, like again, she's also physically feminine, and she's like, but my true self working remote. And now that I'm married, she's like, I got him. You know what I mean? It's like, I feel like it,
Right.
like in a way you're like, and it's not true to you, but we do put a little more effort in the way we look. We want to be accepted, right? And then maybe once you get into that relationship or that marriage, okay, now I'm taking the wig off, or like, it's like, like, right. But I'm just, so it's like, my true form right now is like, I want to sit on the couch and watch TV, and I don't want you to touch me. Like, and I want to eat snacks and like hang out with you.
Yeah.
But like, we can't get there until I like pull you in with everything else, with my looks, and you know what I mean? And sometimes that's exhausting. It's exhausting.
I mean, dating is exhausting in general if you think about it. Like gosh, it's starting over with new people. Ugh, gosh, I'm sorry. Yeah, dating can be exhausting, but it can be really fun too. It can be really fun too. So.
It can be. Hold on to your husband. Go ahead and just hold on to him.
I do not envy dating culture, because I think like too the name of your podcast, like the swipe culture, it's so prevalent, and it really does affect not just dating but also like the way people view relationships. People are so quick to be like, on to the next, on to the next. And I think that mentality has really kind of poisoned our romantic culture, because nobody can stick around and stick through stuff anymore. And that's probably a topic for another day. But anyway.
But it's true. I know. No, you're telling me. It's just, it's become so transactional, or just so a picture, it's just, so I'm really on a mission to meet people in person. I realize I have to leave my house in order to do that. So I'm working on that part. But
it's a great start.
It's a great start. I'm going to start leaving the house. Just got to leave the house. Let's try there. It's exhausting. It's exhausting. Well, do you have any advice for anyone who is considering looking for a matchmaker or has never thought to use one?
Absolutely. You know that I do. So I feel like we've already touched pretty much on open-mindedness and how crucial that one is. I think that's probably the biggest piece. I think we've touched on this a little bit as well, but I'll also reiterate vulnerability. As open and honest as you can be with your matchmaker, the better, your matchmaker can match you. And I know it's sometimes hard to get into the stickiness of our past and our triggers and all of those different things, but the more we know, the better we can match. And so that's also a really important piece. And finally, I think you have to go into matchmaking with the mindset that it's a process, and it's a process that does take time. I have a client. I have a client who has a super specific idea about what she's looking for. She's the opposite of someone who is open-minded and flexible. And when you go in with that rigid kind of mentality, it affects everything. It affects your experience, and she's not having the best experience. And I try to coach her into being a little bit more flexible to this and that. And basically, go into it knowing that, like we talked about earlier, your dream person might not be packaged in the way that you think. And so understanding that it can take time, understanding that your matchmaker is not a people generator, right? We're working with people that have flaws, but strengths as well, And so keeping all of those things in mind, I think will really enable you to have a positive experience.
That's so true. I'm like, if you're listening, you hear that? It's okay if he's a couple inches shorter. It's okay.
Hey, the short kings need love too.
Well, listen, I'm open to the short kings. I've really, truly, I'm trying to keep a balance between being open-minded and having no standards. I'm trying to keep.
Yes. Love that.
Like I'm like, okay, now we can't just love on everybody, but
right. That's true. And that's my
But
philosophy too in matchmaking. You know, like I want to try to align your values and lifestyles as much as possible so you don't have to compromise your core values, right? But more so compromising on, you know, maybe does he squeeze the toothpaste in the way that you like? Some people are very picky about that. I don't get that, but that's also a story.
That's really specific. That's really specific. But I will say, Jasmine, icks, that is like a thing. Like I have icks like that where I'm like, ooh, the way he wears his flip flops, I just want to punch him in the face. Like, and you're married, so I'm sure you have a lot. Like when you live with someone so long,
you know. Yes. But yeah.
Do you have any advice on how to get over icks? Like anything that grosses, like, or just like those peeves that people that are just really dumb, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's really all communication. I think one of the big things I remember learning, because we did premarital counseling, and one of the things that I learned that's always stuck with me is communicating how you feel and I feel statements. When you do this, it makes me feel, and that makes it so it's not like you're placing blame, but it lets them know and gives them an awareness of how that behavior affects you. You know, so there are some things that you're just going to have to like accept, right? But there are other things that are like, if they're big enough, because you do have to choose your battles, but if they're big enough, you know, communicating it in that way and kind of going from there. I think I found that really helpful.
That's really, you know what? The key to this I'm learning now is communication and maturity.
Big time. Absolutely. Absolutely. And emotional maturity, a desire to continue to grow, you know, that, yes, 100%.
You're right. And even though it's little things like that, I think the communication of like, hey, babe, I don't like the way you pick your nose, or like, I don't like the way you know what I mean? Right. But like stuff like that, where it's like, we're humans and sometimes humans do human things and now we're together and I don't want to live with that, you know?
No, for real. That's real. 100%. Ugh, yeah.
Gross.
Do my own.
Right. I'm like,
I'm gross.
They're gross.
Oh my gosh. Can't live with them. Can't live without them.
I can live without them, Jasmine, but I don't want to.
That's also real. Very bad.
I don't want to. That's why I'm talking to you. Well, thank you so much. That's all I had for you today. I now personally have a new kind of insight on matchmakers. Now that I know you, because I'm like, again, all the other matchmakers I've seen, and especially in Phoenix, I'm like, you know.
So
yeah,
mostly into local ones.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it could be worth, and I don't know, like what the difference in like packaging would be like, but I work with nationwide clients, and so it could be worth, you know, looking for people who do work nationwide. You know, I don't know. Food for thought.
Interesting. A question for you: do you meet with them in person? Do you do remote? You do it all?
Usually the first meeting is over Zoom just because it's the most easy, but always open to meet in person as well to see if there's, you know, more we can learn about each other and stuff like that. But
yeah,
pretty much all over Zoom.
Very cool. I feel like in person you can pick up on people's like body language and energy and be
For
like,
sure.
You're really good, or like you're a weirdo. Like you can, you know.
For sure. No, that's so true. And that's why for dates, I like to have them meet in person if possible. But sometimes we do Zoom dates as well, you know, because I think ultimately you can still see if there's a connection, you know, meeting over Zoom.
That is true.
That feeling that physical presence is also important. So, you know, each has their own kind of benefits and cons and stuff.
Yeah, that's true. Wow. Well, I might be knocking on your door.
Let me know.
To find my Winston Duke.
Okay. Please do.
I will. And for the rest of our listeners, when I post this, I'll post all your social media. So if you want to hit up Jasmine to help find you your Winston Duke or your Channing Tatum or whatever you're into. All right now. She's like, I don't know if we have that in Phoenix, but I'll do my best.
Exactly. I love it.
Cool. Well, thank you, Jasmine. I really appreciate it.
Yes, of course. Cool. This was so fun. I appreciate it.
Yes. Thanks for coming. I'll have to have you back on when we start talking about like married life.
Let's do that. Okay, because that's where the real tea is.
That's the right. I'm like, that's where the real tea is. And I have some questions about being a wife. What is that all about?
A journey.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for tuning into Swipe Society. Please rate us and leave us a 5-star review on Spotify and anywhere else you listen to this podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. If you're not already, please give us a follow on Instagram at Swipe Society Pod and send all questions and inquiries to hello@swipesocietypod.com. Don't forget, we drop new episodes every Wednesday. Chat soon!